Hi, my name is Kyle Boyson with the EdTech team at Adult Education Services. Today I'm going to walk you through the process for submitting blended learning resources for evaluation and record keeping using this Google form. This is a required process for using the teacher verification model to track proxy hours for your students during lessons that you've created or found that are not part of state-approved curricula. Part of this form's purpose is also to guide you through the vetting of your resource to assure that it is high quality, standards aligned, and accessible with the devices that your students are most commonly using. As a quick note, in order to use the teacher verification model for time tracking, you must first complete the Blended Learning Certification course on the EMS. So as we move forward through the video, you're going to see that there's a lot of sets of instructions that give you additional guidance for filling out the form. I'm going to go ahead and skip reading those to you because I'm going to be verbalizing them instead. Then I'm going to fill this form out as if I'm submitting a resource myself, and I'll explain each of the fields as we go through them. So the first field down here is the email address. The reason this field is important is that not only can we contact you afterwards if necessary, but also the form will send you your completed submission for documentation later for your own personal use and also at the program level. We're also going to be asking for your first and last name and which program you are currently working for. I'm going to choose the Arizona Department of Education, Adult Education Services. All of the other programs are there on that list. Then at the bottom, you'll see not only is there a next button to continue to the next part of the form, but there's also a progress bar that gives you an idea of how far through the process you are. So you can see here on the second page of the form that we're looking for details about your resource that are at a little bit of a higher level. So we're looking specifically first for the title of your resource. There's no specific format for the title, but anything that allows us to locate the resource later inside of our repository or for later use for another teacher at your site would be great. You can see here at the beginning I've documented the name of the resource and then also just the lesson that it's addressing. Below that you can see that there's a space to say which subject area you're going to be addressing with your lesson. Because there's the possibility of multiple subject areas being addressed, these are checkboxes. I will be just selecting mathematics for today. Below that, there is a space to provide information about the AZ Adult Education standards that are being addressed. Now, this can be a little bit complicated because of the variety of standards we have and the different ways to document them. So the general rule of thumb here is going to be providing more information rather than less. I've gone ahead and grabbed the standard that is addressed by that Khan Academy video, and I'll show you my example here. This has the EFL, it has the domain and the standard number, as well as the information for the standard in its entirety. The more information you can provide us, the better. Below that, you can see that there's a designated time. This designated time is very important because it has to do with the amount of proxy hours each student will receive for completing the activity. That needs to be decided before anything is assigned to the students. So for this activity, I'm going to go ahead and say that it takes a total of 30 minutes to complete. Below that, I need to make a justification for that time. In this case, the videos for the Khan Academy lesson will take 15 minutes with pauses for comprehension. That's what I'll say. And then the 11 practice questions, practice, will take another 15 minutes for a total of 30 minutes to complete the assignment. So just a simple justification for what this time is above so that we understand that there's an alignment between the assignment and how long you've chosen. Below that, and the final part of this form, is called evaluation pathways. In order to make the process for submitting blended learning resources as streamlined as possible, we've provided two pathways on this form, one for canned resources and the other for teacher-created resources. Canned resources would be something like Khan Academy that I'll be submitting alongside you in this video. Teacher-created resources are generally a tapestry of digital resources that are woven together by a teacher, or a completely original teacher resource like a Canvas site or a Google site that the teacher has put together for the express purposes of teaching the standards that were listed above. The information here will kind of give you a better idea of how to evaluate which resource you've chosen, which type of resource. Like I said before, we're going to go ahead and go with the canned resource. I'm going to select it here from the drop-down menu, and I'm going to click Next. You can see now in this section of the form, we're going to be going ahead and documenting our canned resource. To give you a quick summary, a canned resource is an online resource that generally is shorter and smaller in scope and addresses a specific standard. An example, as I'm showing you right here, is Khan Academy. Those are videos that are generally in the 5-minute range and directly address a standard that has usually one-to-one correlation with an adult education standard. Another great example would be a series of videos on YouTube like Math Antics that have a similar purpose. You can see right here that we're going to document a little bit about the resource that we're choosing. And the first thing that we need to document is the URL. You can see I went ahead and pasted it in, and it does not format as a link, but don't worry, on the other end, when the form is submitted, it will format as a link. Keep in mind that you can also submit, just by hitting return a couple of times, another link that links to another part of the lesson if necessary. Below that is the lesson context, and this is where there's a big difference between the canned resources and the teacher-created resources. Because this is generally a simpler process and the lessons are a little bit smaller in scope, all we need is for you to check one of these boxes about how your lesson is going to fit in with your face-to-face teaching. In this case, we're going to say that students have learned in class about units of measurement in the metric system. Then they're going to be using Khan Academy at a distance for reinforcement and practice. You could select multiple of these if for some reason you're using the blended learning resource as an extension of learning or as an assessment, but for our purposes we're just going to stick with the reinforcement and practice. And finally, at the bottom, we have to provide a small justification for how our resource fills in an area or provides something to students that state-approved curricula does not. I'm going to go ahead and type out my answer here. I'm going to say Khan Academy provides clear, concise lessons that are broken up by related questions to help students assess their own understanding. This resource, in conjunction with state-approved curricula, so we're going to go ahead and say that we used some Odyssey-ware in class, for example. Curricula used in class provides an opportunity for students to see the material presented in a different way. So once again, not too in-depth, but just providing a little bit of justification for using the teacher verification model, and in particular this resource. Then we're going to go ahead and hit Next. In the last section of the form, we're going to be looking at the accessibility of the resource you're evaluating. The first question has to do with audience appropriateness. Is the resource you're providing appropriate for adults, or is it more child-oriented? It's important to consider these things before providing resources to your adult learners, though ultimately it's the judgment call of the teacher, as you know your students the best. I'm going to go ahead and put, because Khan Academy is very cut and dry and straightforward, that it's a 4 and it's very adult-oriented. Is the resource free to access for students? This includes resources that are paid for through platforms through your program. So as long as the student doesn't have to provide any extra funds to purchase the resource, we can click yes here. All resources should fall under this category. Does the resource function on reliable and/or low-speed internet? This is tough to test, but generally things like YouTube or other video players that automatically scale down the quality based on the internet connection are suitable for more of a low-speed or unreliable internet connection. This is another professional judgment call. Here we have which devices you've tested your resource on. Oftentimes we'll be testing them on the main device we use to plan and prepare for teaching. But if you have access to other devices like an iPhone or a tablet, it's be really important to test the resource on as many platforms as possible to eliminate any variables that might pop up. I went ahead and selected PC, Android, iPhone, and tablet. It may also be important for you to look into testing the resource on older computers depending on what accessibility your students have to technology. Finally, in this last section, which browsers have you tested the resource on? I have these 3 browsers on my computer, so we're going to go ahead and say that I've tested this resource on all 3 of these browsers. I know that Khan Academy actually works really well, not only on mobile devices, but in multiple browsers. It's been very well vetted and tested by the people that put Khan Academy out. So I'm going to go ahead and select these right here. You can see right here that our progress bar is filled up, which means that we are done once we click submit. And once you submit your blended learning resource, you will see that this little notification will pop up at the end thanking you for your time, and you will be emailed a copy of your submission. It's very important that you take that copy and you forward it to your administration for record-keeping purposes. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn about the new process for submitting a blended learning resource. We are here to help, so if there are any questions or any doubts related to the process, please feel free to reach out to us. It's aesedtech@azed.gov, and that's a lot of A's and E's, so I've gone ahead and thrown it in the description for the video below. Thanks again for your time, and have a wonderful day.